Stone Cold's illustrious career had come to an end at WrestleMania 19. The wrestling world was certainly going to miss an icon of Austin's stature. His drawing power and immense talent was second to none, and now he was gone. WWE had already come to terms with Austin's departure in 2002. His walkout caused a shift in the original brand split plans, which were already about easing Austin away from the #1 spot. He was exhausted, burnt out, and even though it's a bit unfortunate he walked away at the time, it turned out to be for the best. Now, I would talk about the original walkout, but I've seen too many videos on it, and in addition, I'm not really going to be saying anything new about it. With that said, you guys know what's up over here. So at the time, WWE realized it was best to make Austin an on-screen character. This time around, Austin feuded with the likes of Eric Bischoff and was the co-GM and eventually the Sheriff. Despite his limited role, Austin remained one of the most over wrestlers in the entire WWE. It's important to mention that he never outright retired at the time. He was still dabbled up on the possibility of another match or two. And to quote his interview with BBC 5 Radio back in January of 2004, we're gonna see never say never. I think I've got a match or two left in me. Maybe after WrestleMania. Let's play it by here and see what happens. The rumors are heating up. A proposal of Austin and McMahon for WrestleMania 20 was made, however, Stone Cold turned it down. It wasn't exactly enticing to him, so they made him the special referee of the Lesnar and Goldberg match. By this point, it was clear as day that Austin was remaining after WrestleMania. There was absolutely no talk of a departure or dispute with management. If anything, things were looking up because the Texas Rattlesnake was developing his own brand of beer. Austin went to a brewery to taste, and the partnership with High Falls Brewing seemed very promising initially. It was clear as day that WWE was involved when reading the press release. Their level of involvement, though, was unknown initially. We didn't know how much involved they were, but they were involved. The whole thing was taken very seriously, and some even speculated on the potential success of a Stone Cold beer. What helped Austin is his name, the reach that Stone Cold, the man that's known for drinking beer on the daily, had. So there was potential, but I'm going to stay on my lane because I don't know anything about this. So after WrestleMania, the WWE took a hit in star power. In particular, Brock Lesnar and Goldberg departed for their endeavors. For Brock, it was the NFL. Goldberg, on the other hand, made good on his contract and was gone. Then, from out of nowhere, Stone Cold Steve Austin disappeared. On March 26, 2004, Stone Cold Steve Austin was arrested on assault charges. That was the initial report, and it was more than incorrect because Austin was not arrested. The true nature of the incident was that it was a domestic dispute. Austin was accused by his then-girlfriend Tess Broussard of assault after discussion of their relationship. She claimed Austin pushed her and she suffered an injury to her hand. The situation was quickly diffused though, and no charges are filed. The situation though upset WWE, and it would only get worse because at the time, Austin was negotiating for the terms of his contract. There was no news on Stone Cold until following the April 5, 2004 episode of Raw, which I should know he was not associated with at all. There was no plans, no appearance backstage, none of that. Reports at the time believed it had to do with a domestic situation, however there was more to the story. Pro Wrestling Insider discussed the story at great detail over here. Shout out to Pro Wrestling Insider. For the past few weeks, WWE has been negotiating a new contract with Steve Austin. Austin recently hired a non-wrestling, high-powered lawyer for representation, so the negotiations have been quite intense. Although the lawyer is not used by many other wrestlers, he's familiar with the various contracts of other superstars, so definitely has his homework done and came in with tough preparations for the negotiations. Reports indicate that this was the most aggressive process WWE has seen in a long time since buying out WCW. WWE has had almost full control of most negotiations, so the fact that Austin's lawyer was playing hardball was certainly unexpected and unusual. As reported, Austin's lawyer and Vince got into a huge argument on Friday, and the meeting ended very badly. This was in addition to the fact that WWE was upset over the domestic incident. So Austin's status with WWE is not the most favorable right now. Apparently the main issue is that Austin wanted more control over what outside projects he could partake in, and Vince would not budge. As with The Rock's early acting jobs, Vince wanted a cut of Austin's profits, plus in Austin's case, wanted complete control over what Austin did outside of WWE. Okay, compared to The Rock, Austin didn't have the same leverage over here. You know, he wasn't a wrestler anymore as well, unlike The Rock, so he was in a bit of a tough situation. That said, he still had more leverage than anyone on the roster. That's one thing to mention. Plus, WWE at the time was the only game in town. There was TNA, but it wasn't much, especially compared to a year later. So whatever WWE offered, you had to take it, basically. According to OneWrestling.com, one WWE backstage source actually expressed support for Steve Austin's stance against Vince McMahon through new contract negotiations, saying that they were happy that somebody stood up to Vince in terms of contract negotiating. Most wrestlers, given that WWE's television monopoly, just take the contracts that the WWE gives them. Austin's power in negotiating is strong due to his name value and being respected responsible for a large amount of merchandise sold. Despite not being able to wrestle, Austin has a decent negotiation position. Moving on, the locker room seeing Austin as the only guy at the time that can actually negotiate is kind of sad because, as I said, it was a take or leave it type of situation for most. They were going to bend over backwards, especially with no competition around, so the only hope was seeing somebody else get what they truly want in negotiations. More details emerged as the days went by. Even more details have been revealed about Steve Austin's contract signing blowing up that took place last week. As has been reported, Austin and McMahon did meet face-to-face earlier this week at the SmackDown tapings. However, they are still stuck on the clause situation that involves Austin's outside of WWE projects, such as movies, television, and whether or not he will be able to use the name Stone Cold in the outside projects. Apparently, Vince McMahon is playing hardball with Austin, trying to weigh him out because he believes that Austin needs the spotlight from WWE television in order to make it big in the outside projects. Austin is doing the same thing by fighting as hard as he can to get the clause brought into his new contract. Nevertheless, sources close to the situation feel confident that the two parties will work out a new deal as they have been able to in the past, and it just depends on how long Austin wants to fight the situation. As of yesterday, Austin was not expected to be on this Monday's upcoming edition of Raw, and he will not be until a deal is reached. For now, Austin will be working his new beer deal that he just signed. For those wondering what the locker room thinks of the situation, they are pretty much indifferent and feel that Austin will come to terms with WWE. So at the time, it was all down to one little but at the same time huge thing, the name. The holdup was all on that, and in the end, that was enough to break off. On April 16, 2004, WWE and Steve Austin parted ways. After months of negotiations, the WWE and Steve Austin have been unable to come to terms on a new contract, and as a result have mutually agreed to part company. Both parties have left the door open to work together again in the future, and the WWE wishes Steve the very best in his future endeavors. It wasn't that shocking to some because they had seen it a mile away, especially with the way WWE did business, but the Raw roster did take a bit of a hit without Austin. It would have been worse if he was on SmackDown because their star power wasn't doing so well. The Torch reported in April of 2004, as reported earlier this evening, Steve Austin and WWE have parted ways due to the contractual issue. This came as a surprise to some backstage, as the general feeling was that the two parties would eventually come to terms, since the issue did not seem all too serious to some people. It was serious to Austin, however, as he strongly contends WWE's claim to the Stone Cold name, asserting that he and his wife came up with the idea. Out of appreciation for his time with the company, Austin didn't even feel getting rights to the name should be an issue. But WWE was not willing to give him those rights at this time. News of Austin's leave also silences rumors of the two parties reaching a temporary solution regarding Austin having a shorter ring schedule. Again, this report of Austin and WWE parting ways should not be a surprise if you've been following our stories, but some in WWE did believe that progress was being made on the issue. Rumors have already hit the streets regarding Steve Austin working in Japan, but nothing is definite at this point. About that, yeah, there was a little noise. New Japan Pro Wrestling expressed great interest in bringing Austin back. They needed a top draw, and since it was the Inoki era, things weren't doing too well. At the same time, Hustle 3 was happening on May 8th. Austin was pursued for the event because 1, his draw and power, and 2, Goldberg was set to wrestle in the main event, so they were buddies. People were like, oh, Goldberg could sway Austin his way, this and that. So it kind of makes sense. Goldberg did not appear, though, because he backed out due to a hand injury. And he was coming, he was going to receive a lot of money, but that never happened, and he was replaced by Mick Foley. As for McMahon, he elaborated further on the Stone Cold situation on Off the Record in June of 2004. McMahon said that the fans want the Austin of old, but now he's a guy who can't really wrestle. Regardless, he would have taken him back. Austin, though, declined his tremendous offer. McMahon left the door open and said that there was still value in Stone Cold despite not being an in-ring performer. When Michael Landsberg asked him if he could cross over, McMahon revealed that his future was in film. He was set to star in The Marine, and while he can't be like The Rock, he could cross over. More news dropped in regards to Austin and McMahon's relationship that week by The Torch and The Wrestling Observer. Sources claim that the phone call between Vince McMahon and Steve Austin that was reported a while ago involved Vince telling Austin that if it were up to him, Austin could have the Stone Cold name for personal use. However, he could never get the stockholders to agree to such a costly proposal. Dreamstage Entertainment, the company behind Hustle and Pride, wanted Austin and were considered to have great potential to become competition with WWE. Austin apparently turned them down in fear of not succeeding in Japan as a draw, and in turn ruining his stock in negotiations with WWE. It's a calculated move by Austin. The Texas Rattlesnake wasn't really talked about in the summer unless it was about his incident with his girlfriend at the time. His relationship with WWE was certainly much better as he appeared backstage on an episode of Raw in August of 2004, but it wasn't going to materialize to a point where Austin would return full-time. Instead, it was a little different. Although nothing major came out of his meeting with Vince McMahon, sources inside WWE claim Austin and Vince are on decent terms and that a return to the company is far from out of the question. However, it's not likely that Austin will ever return as a long-term regular character, and if he does return, it's expected that it will be in Mick Foley fashion. excluding the Orton feud, where he'll appear for a few weeks stint leading up to a guest referee or enforcer gig. WWE may bring him in for an even longer period of time, but due to the fact that Austin's character generally requires in-ring wrestling to truly be successful, WWE simply cannot find use for him in a long-term regular role, because WWE's major angles almost always include in-ring wrestling, and since Austin is very strict about how his character is used over the long term, both sides generally accept the unlikelihood of a regular role. And that's exactly what happened. It makes very sense because, as I said, Austin couldn't really wrestle at the time, and for the story to get deeper, he has to wrestle. Following this, Stone Cold made an appearance via video package for the SmackDown 5th anniversary, and anytime a mention of Austin in WWE was made, it was positive, and then in January 2005, they came to terms. Steve Austin agreed to terms with WWE Films on a 3-picture deal. He was also allowed to use the Stone Cold name. Soon enough, he was confirmed to return for WrestleMania 21, a part of Piper's Pit, and he was back. So there it is. Of course, I gotta mention that his contract, once he returned at WrestleMania 21, was a performer's contract. It wasn't a films thing. It was much different. But Austin was back. Alright, so that's the video. I thought this was interesting because I made one on The Rock a while ago. I wanted to follow up with Stone Cold, but I never got the chance to do so until now. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know I did. So yeah. Alright, what did you guys think of Stone Cold's departure in 2004? Please comment down below. That's the first video. Make sure you hit the loot that's press on the like button or perhaps the Stone Cold stunner on the subscribe button. Peace. I'm out.